Located on the pristine shores of Guerrero, Mexico, Playa Viva is an environmentally conscious resort dedicated to sustainability and regenerative practices. Guests enjoy a stay in a uniquely designed treehouse suspended in a palm tree, just steps away from the ocean. At Playa Viva, you can immerse yourself in nature, attend a morning yoga practice, volunteer in a turtle sanctuary, engage in a workshop, or just simply relax in paradise. Hi, I'm Bobby Marsden, and welcome to the Glamptuary podcast, where we talk about the experiential outdoor hospitality industry and sustainable lifestyles. In episode 4, we sat down with David Leventhal, owner of Playa Viva and a crusader in regenerative design. We talked about the importance of knowing your why, and how that has helped David shape the experiences at Playa Viva. He also has some very insightful thoughts for folks who are considering a career in outdoor hospitality. So, sit back, relax, and enjoy episode 4 on season 3 of the Glamptuary podcast. David Leventhal, welcome to the Glamptuary podcast. So happy to have you.
Bobby, thank you. It's good to be on the Glamptuary podcast.
So where are you coming to us from today?
At this moment, I am in Chicago. I came to see my daughter, who was awarded for winning a movie that she did as part of study abroad with IES. They did their 10th annual film festival, and she came in second place among hundreds of films that were submitted. So very, very proud of her.
Congratulations. Well, very good on you to be doing some dad time. I would imagine that's few and far between sometimes based on all the things that you're doing in your life, but I'm happy to hear that you commit time to that. Well, David, speaking of what drew me to you, it's Playa Viva, and it looks like a wonderful location from what I can tell from the website. Hopefully someday I am lucky enough to visit in person. And one thing that really drew me in when I was perusing the site was a quote that you put up. And in that quote, you said, where your vacation meets your values, which I think is such a wonderful statement. Can you elaborate on what that statement means for you and kind of how that fits into Playa Viva? And then maybe just high level, what is Playa Viva? What makes it so awesome?
All right. Yeah, let's start with high level. Playa Viva is 200 acres. It's a mile of beachfront. It's near the town of Huluchuca, Mexico, which is about 35, 40 minutes south drive from Zihuatanejo Ixtapa International Airport. Zihuatanejo is a very old community, hundreds of years of history. After Cortez conquered Mexico, he built the ships that he then sailed to conquer the Philippines in the Bay of Zihuatanejo. Ixtapa was part of the growth of Cancun, Cabo, but didn't grow as big, so it's still quaint and nice and beautiful. And what's beautiful about Playa Viva is you walk out onto the beach and you look left and you look right and you don't see anything or anybody as far as the eye can see except for the local fishermen coming down to catch something to take home and eat. So it's currently 19. We're building our 20th room right now at Playa Viva, and it has a whole farm-to-table program that goes with it, a whole social and environmental impact program that we call Resimar that hopefully we'll have time to talk about. But the idea of, where your vacation meets your values really came about from where Sandra Khan, my ex-wife, and I, when developing Playa Viva, we weren't hoteliers. We didn't come out of the Cornell School of Hospitality or some Swiss School of Hospitality. It was more of an evolution of much of what we had done in our past. And, when we travel, we would go to these hotels. Let's say we'd go scuba diving somewhere in Australia, and we'd walk into the restaurant and be like, table for two, table for two, table for two. We're like, wait a minute, all these people travel from all over. We have something in common. Why aren't we sitting together? Why don't we get to know each other? And so, Playa Viva, the big table is a real important part of the experience. And so, when you say when your vacation meets your values, in many ways, they were kind of our values. But what we found is, as travelers came, they really resonated with how we were doing travel. And so that's where it expanded to really become a tagline for us. And that tagline is trademarked, and we've expanded it to include not only Playa Viva, but regenerative travel as well.
It's a wonderful story. And I think it's so important that you infuse your personal values into the values of the brand you're launching, but also understanding the separation of that brand from your person as well and allowing that brand to grow. So you mentioned that you did not come from a background or a big background in hospitality.
Yeah.
But obviously you've landed, it sounds like, in a great space. You're 16 years in now. So congratulations for that. Tell us about what it was like before hospitality. What were you doing? What led you to Playa Viva?
Well, I like to say I kind of came full circle because I started out bussing tables when I was 16 to pay for my gas money.
Me too.
Right? How many of us? Then I waited tables in college at a restaurant called Spanky's in Chapel Hill that paid for my college education and for my frat bill. But eventually went into video production and media and storytelling, and then into high tech and more so in sales, marketing, and business development, really understanding how tech can be a powerful tool for developing businesses and scaling. And so much of what I learned from that went into our business. The other side of it is Sandra Kahn, my ex-wife and I got involved in a jaguar habitat project through a biologist we met who was doing a project in the Yucatan and Calakmul. And so that really started me down the road of being a conservationist. And, but what you learn quickly is just because you put a fence around or a virtual fence around a big piece of property, hundreds of thousands of acres, doesn't necessarily protect it from being deforested and from the jaguars being hunted and pelt sold. And through relationships with certain mentors, what I also learned was you got to solve the people problems around that area so that they don't have that pressure to be extractive in what they do. And so the evolution was from not just a conservationist, but to social and environmental impact in what you do and how you look at it, what I call a dualist. And then when Sandra went off to Greenville to look at who was going to help us develop Playa Viva, and she met Bill Reed and the Regenerative team, it was just a natural extension from conservation to this dualist to really a whole systems approach through regeneration in what we do. So, Playa Viva, now I talk about, we're going into season 16 because we closed during the rainy season and reopened in late October. We're doing storytelling in many ways. The season has got a set number of return actors who are there, our general manager, et cetera. And then we have guest stars that come in for what we do. But we've created kind of this virtual space around creating these stories of transformation.
So how did you find Playa Viva? I mean, how did you find that plot of land to bring this vision and this idea into the real world?
Yeah, good question. And I used to tell the long story of how we found Playa Viva, and then I've learned to tell kind of the short story about it. And the short story is the land found us.
Love that.
And what I mean by that is, Playa Viva is on an archaeological site. It used to be the town of Sulu Chuyan, which you can find in the local museum. And it either means the place of gourds or the place where you grow old or the place of old people. And when we actually did the history of place, the story of place as part of the regenerative development process, we were interviewing town elders. We interviewed a woman who was 98 and her mother, right? So this is kind of a blue zone without the paying for the blue zone brand. But the property itself were agricultural terraces, and my ex-mother-in-law, Elena Khan, works with Mexican peasants trying to get them back into traditional farming methods. She's been fighting Monsanto Bayer to keep GMO corn, genetically modified corn, out of Mexico. And so in many ways, the work we're doing with the place is really a continuation of that work, as if the place found us to help bring back what it once was. And that is part of the regenerative design process, is to understand the potential of the place, to understand what used to be there and bring back the abundance of place. So, you want to hear the long story of how we found a place?
Maybe we'll save that for sharing the cervezas when I come down there. But I think the short story encapsulated it great. And a couple of the things I noticed on the site, which again I hope I can see in person, is a turtle sanctuary, which I've never heard of, which sounds amazing, and also your beautiful glamping structure. Because can you talk a little bit about the structures that you have the chance to stay in, and also how does the turtle sanctuary play in?
Okay. The structures, when we did the regenerative design process as a history of place, one of the things came up is it was most recently a coconut grove, an orchard for coconuts. And Irie Cunliffe, the architect that was part of the team, came up with this interesting idea of using the palms, basically transplanting the palms from the orchard to the dunes so that the palm are piers providing this structure to hold the dunes in place, because dunes can be destroyed through other construction processes, and then building treehouse on the palms. And at first we went down that route, but we didn't figure out how to transplant the palms with the 99% success rate that we do now. So most recently we transplanted the palms and built these beautiful tree houses with bamboo for the light structure right on the beach. The original design of the original treehouse, the iconic kind of structure that we have, that was designed by Kim Shasta Baldwin. Just a brilliant idea. And that's a whole other story about kind of looking at our unconscious bias and who we were hiring, and really looking for somebody outside of our traditional base. And Kim Shasta did a great job with that. And then the follow-up on that was done by a group, Nomadic Resorts, and Olaf Bruin, the architect in the Netherlands, and really took it to the next level with the whole idea of the manta rays. A video was taken, a drone video of this beautiful manta ray migration. It was like, what if this could be the design? So really using something local as the inspiration and taking it to the next level. And people love. It's like they talk about going to Swiss Family Robinson, staying in these tree houses. They have a certain appeal to it. But at the same time, it is glamping. We recently were awarded 2 keys from Michelin. So very, very proud of that to go along with it. Thank you. And thanks to our team for really making that happen. The turtle sanctuary, when we got there, the turtle sanctuary guys came up and said, are you guys going to kick us off here? I was like, what? It's like, if we're Disneyland, you guys are Mickey Mouse, right? That was really the first group that we worked with on, okay, how do we continue to support the work of a turtle sanctuary and work with the people in the community? These are 14 volunteers, usually folks who were poachers, because they're the ones who knew how to find the turtle nests, and then turn them from poachers into conservationists, which I think is part of one of our core values in creating transformational experiences. If you'll, let me digress a little bit here. One of the core values of regenerative travel is what I call reciprocity. And what I've learned as an example of how reciprocity works is, if you get a chance to release baby turtles back to the ocean, often guests will say, wow, this is like a life-changing experience. It is really amazing and heartfelt, and just to see nature work that way. But, if you're a turtle sanctuary guy and you've been doing this for 16 years, like, okay, baby turtles, put them out. Some get in first. Most of them get at the same time. Few stragglers. Hopefully we can get the stragglers in before the birds get them. All right, we're done. Let's get out of here. No big deal. And so reciprocity comes about where releasing turtles is just, it's day to day. It's like no big deal, with somebody who this is a life-changing opportunity. And for them to see, wow, what I'm doing is actually special. Like that to me is really at the core of what regenerative travel is all about.
We would definitely remember experiences much more than things that we just see. And I think that's so important in this movement with experiential outdoor hospitality to not just give somebody some place to stay, let them figure it out. But if there's planned programs and things that help them understand the culture, help them understand their surroundings, help them understand the nature that they're in, they take so much more back. And hopefully they can take some of that and fuse that into their day-to-day life. And you have a list of great core principles, which again is not often the case when you look at destinations websites. But I think it's so important because people are now making their decisions on, I want to travel with purpose versus I just want to travel.
Yep.
And your core principles you have listed are use cleaner, more abundant and transparent energy, water, and waste streams. You have promote and create biodiversity. You have create transformational experiences, which we just talked about. You have promote meaningful community, which I think also is wrapped into that. And then you have create a living legacy, which I love that.
Yep.
And that's, I think, taking that experience and travel outside back into your day-to-day life and also create something that lives on in the location that you're currently in. So those are so amazing. How did you develop these principles? Like what went into coming up with that? What was that process like?
That was done very, very early on as part of the regenerative design process, sitting down with the Regenesis group. And, you know, I actually am doing some of this work now with folks because what it gets to the core of is it's kind of like doing a mission statement, but mission statements, you can kind of use the automatic mission statement generator and then it just goes up on the shelf somewhere and nobody looks at it. Mm-hmm. What this asks is why? Why are you doing what you're doing? You know, I was just recently working with Sean Paul, who kind of helped me in that transition from conservationist to doing the social impact part. And he's developing a regenerative mezcal brand. And, you know, my work with that team was in creating a set of core values. Why are you doing what you're doing? And one of the things that came out of that was joy, was a core value. So it was in that first design charrette being this all hands meeting where we all sat down and said, why are we doing what we're doing? And those came out as core values. Originally, there were 7, and the first 3 had to do with energy, water, and waste streams, and we just kind of combined it into one. And I would say over time, of those, the 2 that have really stood out are creating meaningful community and promoting transformational experiences. I think that's really core to the brand differentiation and what we're doing. But yeah, those, you know, I know them by memory. Like as you were telling, I was like, oh yeah, I could tell you those without reading them. The other thing that we've done too is we've worked with our team in saying, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? And allowing them to come up with their own set of core values. And now with Recimar, which is our watershed regeneration project and the spinning off of all of our social environmental work, it's the same thing. What is your why? And you guys come up with your own set of core values and have those core values drive the decisions, but they do drive the decisions. I mean, I'll give a quick example of how it drove early design decisions. You know, as we were looking at developing this, it was, well, we're going to develop casitas and what should be in the casitas. And well, they should have kitchens. Well, should they? Does it promote meaningful community? Does it promote transformational experiences? And eventually we decided, no, we like this concept of the community table and having people come together in a common area. But yet the argument was, well, at least we should have a refrigerator in every room. Well, why? Well, you know, we can have food. Well, why? Well, it ended up bifurcating and the women were like, well, at least we need like a refrigerator so that a mom could have milk for her baby. Right. And we kept pushing. Does that create meaningful community? Does that create transformational experience? If it's really only for that a case, we can get a cooler with ice for that one example. But what we really wanted to drive was having people come into the communal space for meals. And so, yeah, we still don't, serve you coffee and a croissant to your room in the morning because everybody gathering around the coffee, and coffee's included in your stay or the tea or whatever, it's going to be the morning beverage, is part of that. Like, hey, we're all getting together and sharing the experience. So something as simple as that was still driven by our core values in the design process, and they're still involved in the decisions that we make.
Well, I think you said something very key there, and something as simple as that. And it becomes simple when you understand your values. When you don't have a clear understanding of your values, or you just don't have any values, or you're making it up on the fly, those decisions can become very complex. And oftentimes, you won't get the outcome you were looking for because you didn't understand what you needed in the first place. Um, you have a lot of insightful knowledge. There are a lot of people out there that uh, are thinking about doing something like this.
Yeah.
The numbers are trending in a way where glamping, experiential outdoor hospitality is becoming a very popular thing. It's still a little bit misunderstood, I think, but people are trying to figure it out. What kinds of advice would you have in a general sense for people that are thinking about doing this? Whether it's in a place like Mexico, whether it's if you have some general advice for people that are just thinking about doing it anywhere, what are some of the things they should be thinking about before they take the loan out, before they purchase the land, before they decide on a glamping structure?
Short answer,
Yeah.
don't do it.
You're not the first person that said that. And then usually the rebuttal is, and I don't know what yours is going to be, but I'll tell you what other people have said. But if you do decide to, you'll realize it's very worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I would say, if the question, let me reword the question for me, which is, if I were doing it all over again, what would I do differently? I think in our particular case, it's scale. Now, that doesn't mean we could have done it that way. I mean, when we opened in 2008, we were doing this as a residence. But 2008, if you remember, we had this global economic collapse and people were losing their second and third homes and even their primary homes. So buying a second home in Playa Viva, forget about it. So we converted model homes into residences. And then over time, as people, what we were doing and how to vacation and our values and all the other things we've done started resonating with people, we grew with that over time. Had I known now what I know then, it would have been, build 20 rooms to begin with, because we started out with 5 rooms and we had 8 rooms and we had 12 rooms, then 19. Now we're adding a new model home around building an entire community around that, going back to our original concept of building homes. But yeah, scale, I think, is important from the get-go, really, because, at the end of the day, these are businesses. And hospitality is about heads and beds, as they say. Yes, these are experiential types of hospitality product that we're providing. In having spoken at glamping shows and things like that, I mean, what we had special going about us is, once we did our environmental impact study, which took us about a year and was part of our whole regenerative design process, so we could do them both at the same time, we had the permissions to kind of do what we needed to do. It's a lot harder to do that in the US, in Europe, and other places. So the entitlement phase, I think, is a lot more difficult in other places than it has been for us. Although, we did it and did it right to begin with. The regenerative process is something that I definitely recommend. The entire history of place and understanding place. Working with regenerative travel, I've often worked with other developers, and they're like, "Yeah, we're going to do it right, and we've got a permaculturist, and we're planting a garden and a farm." And then, well, can I see the designs of what you're building? And then they show you the design, and you're like, "Wait, you're in Indonesia, but your design looks like it could be anywhere. It could be in Sydney, it could be in Chicago, it could be anywhere, right?" Well, they say, well, our audience really, they don't want to stay in an Indonesian location and to kind of design a building. You're like, then why are you doing what you're doing? Right.
Yeah.
So I think from a regenerative standpoint, it's have the guts to do building that honors place at the same time. That treehouse we built, while it's not Mexico per se, it is honoring the, migration of the manta rays that happened right there. And it's created something iconic and beautiful and wonderful at the same time. So I think it's having guts to do something unique. And that's what's beautiful about glamping too, is you do see these beautiful, iconic, different It doesn't have to be a tent, right? It could be a special type of structure that makes it part of the experiential type of travel we love.
Yeah, I think, the industry itself is lending itself to innovation. There's a lot of people trying new things, and I think every year you see a new structure come up. But I think you hit the nail on the head when you really have to look at the land, the culture, and let the land speak to you, and then develop something that works with the land, not something that you feel is a guessing game of what someone might want. It needs to come from within. You need to be communicating and telling a story and inviting people in to experience your story. And, with regards to the industry, again, like numbers are trending up and that's amazing. What do you see for the future of experiential outdoor hospitality?
Well, I talked to a lot of my friends about their travel experience, and you've got folks that can stay anywhere in the world they can stay, and they've stayed in Four Seasons and Six Senses, and just all these wonderful properties that you read about. And yet what they talk about is, and what they love about Playa Viva is this sense of being at home, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that, travel has gone through this metamorphosis of, back when you used to do it on horseback or camel or whatever, you'd get to somebody's home and you'd be a good guest and they would be a good host, and there'd be this reciprocity and interchange. And, mm-hmm. Over time we had, the Holiday Inn that said, okay, this is a hermetically sealed, safe place to stay. And then you had bigger brands that provided more and more luxury. But eventually, that luxury became a commodity. It was the mm-hmm. same thing everywhere. You knew what to expect mm-hmm. of how they did it. And so now I think there's a move back to authenticity and mm-hmm. in this sense of being at home, where you go and being received by a host into their home. Mm-hmm. And it's not just an Airbnb that somebody built a building, some company bought some Airbnbs and now no, it's really about being hosted. And mm-hmm. so I think that's also something good about glamping is not only the uniqueness of the structure and the uniqueness of the place, but hopefully the uniqueness of the host in curating an environment and experience that's going to be of place and special and unique and wonderful.
I love that. Well, David, I'm excited for you and your upcoming season. Hopefully I get a chance to come down and visit you, but I think what you're doing is wonderful. Is there anywhere that you would want folks to check out? You mentioned regenerative travel, and I did a little bit of research on that, and it looks like there's some educational opportunities there, which might be great for someone who would be thinking about this industry. But would you like people to go check that out?
Oh, definitely. Definitely check out regenerative travel. Definitely check out what we're doing with Recimar, with regenerating the whole watershed and really serving as a model for creating resilience within watersheds and what you do. But I think part of that is we as travelers vote with our dollars, and mm-hmm. we make decisions about, businesses will follow where we choose based on our dollars. And if we're not spending money in extractive things and we're spending money on more local and things that are giving back to the local community and moving away from kind of this extractive, moving more into these regenerative models, then we as tourists can have a real impact in what we do. I'm a true believer that travel, part of our core values is creating transformational experiences, is that, yes, travel is a means for creating change and a positive change in the world.
Travel with purpose.
I really love this Anthony Bourdain quote, which I believe talks about what regenerative travel is all about, which is travel isn't reward for working. It's education for living.
No one says it better than Anthony Bourdain. I love that quote. I love that. Well, listen, you probably have a lot of prep work and you have your time with your daughter, which I definitely do not want to interfere with anymore. So I appreciate your time, David. And I think what you're doing down there is wonderful. And I'm really excited to be able to visit someday. And until we see each other, take care. And thanks for hopping on the podcast.
Bobby, thank you. Thank you for your interest in what we're doing. And thanks for doing what you do and sharing these stories.
I'd like to thank David for his time, his wisdom, and all of his efforts down in Mexico. I think it's wonderful what he's doing. And if you'd like to be a part of Playa Viva, the first stop is the website, which is www.playaviva.com. That is www.playaviva.com. And if you'd like to follow along on the Glamptuary podcast, you can do so on our official website, which is www.glamptuary.com. That is www.glamptuary.com. You can also follow along on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and Pandora Podcasts. We'll see you down the road on the next episode. And until then, namaste.